Well, last week, and the last few weeks before the election, I just became really weary and admittedly a bit anxious over everything that was happening. And I'm just not the kind of person who ever enjoyed a political debate. And so for me, the climate was just a little bit too hot. And I didn't want to read one more Facebook comment, and I didn't want to see any more debates on TV, and I didn't want to hear any commercials. Now I'll let you in on a secret, because my husband isn't here today. So, my husband could watch any sport on TV except for bowling. We have even dropped to the depths that we have watched fishing on TV. And so, for like maybe the last 3.5, 4 weeks, I have let him watch without a single, do we really need to watch this? Any sport he wants. Basketball just pushes my nerves, all the squeaking on the floor does, and I was willing to listen to squeaky shoes. But I needed a diversion because that was not creating a diversion for me. So I headed to Netflix. So I began with Gilmore Girls because, I love Gilmore Girls. I love Gilmore Girls so much that I unfortunately know most of the dialogue, so therefore that was not a distraction. And then my mind kept bracing, like, what are they going to do with that character in the series that's coming up? So that wasn't working. And so I was lighting on what was going to work. I couldn't stand another serial crime. I needed something that was just going to let me hide away. And so I laid it on an idea, Downton Abbey. What could be more different than our intense 2016 than a turn of the century, the 20th century, mind you, drama set far away from us, England. Pretty costumes, lilting accents. It was going to be lovely. And I stuck in my earbuds, and I was set. Yes, the world of Downton Abbey was very, very different than my life today, 2016 New Jersey. There were lords and ladies and maids and butlers and footmen. And yet, when I really began to think about it, and it's not your fault, it's really my fault for thinking too much, because when you have a distraction, the idea is you're not supposed to overthink distractions. But I realized that there were more similarities than I would have ever imagined. For those who might not know about Downton Abbey, it's a story about an aristocratic family and how they navigate the many changes of the 20th century life. And it depicts many of the great events in history and how they had an effect on this noble family, the Crawleys, in contrast to how it affected their domestic servants. And it was interesting. It was interesting to see how the politics of the times were the pulse, actually, of many of the plot lines. There was war and scandal and pandemics and women's suffrage and elections, and there were all lively discussions within the series. And I should not have been surprised. I could really never get completely away from politics. If I was going to ride out this season, I needed something a lot stronger than Netflix. Now, I don't know, but I don't think I'm alone. My feeling may be a little bit off balance. And my hope that November 7th would change it all, well, it didn't. And I don't think it matters if your candidate of choice won or did not, or if you had no candidate of choice at all. Let's be honest. Politics often affect every part of our lives. As a pastor with a full span of people which I love, who have a full spectrum of political ideologies, I came into this week knowing for some there was going to be fear and anxiety on Wednesday morning, and others there was going to be great joy and celebration, and yet others not sure what to think. And I needed to wrestle with, how do I minister to all of you in this climate? Should I ignore the election? Or do I try to find that there are some more meaningful platitudes to put out there than all the things that have already been posted on Facebook? Should I ignore social media? Where do I go? And then I am reminded that politics is a really true part of our human existence. We can tell that right straight from the Bible, that they, from the very ancient of time, God's people, were affected by the politics of their time. And there were some times that they were under the rule of someone that they loved and embraced and empowered and had hoped to become into the position. And then there were other times in which they were in direct conflict. So what do we do with that? And then I found not an escape, but a promise in an unexpected resource. And it's called the church calendar. Now, I don't know if you realize, but the church has its own calendar. It's not just the United Methodist Church. It's a global church thing. And we have seasons of the year. And actually, the last Sunday of our church calendar is next Sunday. And then we move into the season of preparing for Christmas, which is called Advent. And that is the beginning of the church year. And at the end of the year, what the church puts out front is they put out a Sunday called Christ the King Sunday. Christ the King Sunday ends the church year. And I thought, what a fitting way to honor Christ the King as the last Sunday before the beginning of a new year. It gets us an opportunity to look back at all that has happened in a year. Not necessarily through the lens that we do on New Year's, because on New Year's we're so focused on, should we be on a diet, should we start new classes, and all of the worldly things. But this gives us the chance as a church to look back, to use our faith as our guide. And then when we look back at the seasons of the church, if we look back at Advent, the preparation, and then Christmas, and then the Epiphany, which is the time in which we celebrate the King of Kings coming, and then we move into preparations for Easter and the celebration of Christ's resurrection, we look at all these people, places, and we get an opportunity to see how our faith has grown. It gives us an opportunity to be reminded that Jesus is more than a friend or a teacher or a healer. Jesus is more than just a guide for us. It gives us an opportunity to be reminded of the hope to be found in the kingship of Christ. Now, for us, the word king or Lord might seem outdated. But I believe that there are times when only a king will do. I found it interesting as I began to look and study more about Christ the King Sunday that it was added to the church calendar during the same time period as Downton Abbey was. Europe was reeling from World War I. facing economic uncertainty, and witnessing the rise and fall of rulers. The stability of the old social and political orders were changing. They had once embraced royal houses and crowned heads of state, and this was no longer the case. And so, in the midst of this, there were moments of pessimism, and some people actually were concerned and felt hopeless and overwhelmed. And so, as a means of sharing hope to people who were concerned, what the church did is they said, we want you to know and want you to focus not so much on just the present kingdom, but instead on Christ our King. Christ our King Sunday reminds us the promise that Jesus is always present in life, meeting our needs. Life with God is not something merely that we look forward to in someday when we get to heaven, but it is something that we have to look forward to now. And as I searched through the various readings, when I came to this reading of the book of Ephesians, my heart was touched. Because I love the way that this reading begins and what this reading talks about. It opens with Paul being very grateful for the people in his church, because these are people who have his heart, and he shows his love for them by praying for them to be blessed. He prays for them to receive God's Spirit. He prays for them to receive wisdom and understanding. And I believe that this was the perfect scripture for today. Because I, as your pastor, have been praying a lot for all of us lately. He prays that the people will be flooded with hope. Hope that wasn't just a nice, warm, fuzzy feeling. Hope, not like I hope I win the lottery or I hope the Eagles win today kind of hope, but instead hope grounded in the power of God, the Lord of the universe, the God who raised Jesus from the dead, still is with us. This is not the kind of hope that is easily flattened. It is not the kind of hope that is rocked by miserable posts on Facebook. It is not the kind of hope that is dismissed by elections or protest. It will not be swayed by the opinion of others. It will not be dashed by the circumstances of the world. Instead, it is a hope that lasts. And best of all, the very best of all, it is not a hope that we need to wait for. It is a hope that is available for us now. Anyone who is willing to participate with Jesus on his mission, you will see the difference in the world today. We all have a part, just like I shared about the baptism of Juniper, that all of us have a part as Christ's body in helping to raise up children. But we also have a part in embracing and loving one another. And Paul is not thanking them for having nice, warm feelings toward each other, but he is thanking them for having a love in action. God's idea of a gift is not limited to just God blessing us, but it is extended to us blessing one another. And so we are sent out because we have a king as a leader. We have an inheritance. Inheritance not meant to be hoarded or kept for ourselves, but an inheritance of love and hope that is meant to be shared. And so today, I pray for you, the people that are gathered here today. I pray because I am so grateful for the people of this church, the people of this community, the people of churches worldwide. You have my heart. Today I show my love for you for praying that you will be blessed. I pray for you in the same way that Paul prayed for those in his church that he loved so dearly. I pray that you may have the spirit of wisdom, the kind of wisdom that only God can give. I pray that the eyes of your heart will be open to know and experience the hope which God has for all of you. I pray that you will know the glorious riches that God has provided as an inheritance to each and every one of you. I pray that you will understand the incredible greatness of God's power for those who believe in him. I pray that you know that you are all children of God, and you may live out your faith in each and every one of your lives, days of your lives. For now, we live between the first coming of Jesus and his kingly return. We live in the kingdom that is present, but we also live knowing that there is a future kingdom. And we experience a little bit of a preview of that kingdom when we show and share the beautiful gift of hope. This morning I'd like to close with the words of the writer Jan Richardson, whose image of Christ the King is on your cover. Her hope was not for a season about politics. Her hope was actually in a season of darkness after her husband's death. But I believe it is a hope that all of us, no matter what circumstances and what is on our heart and what our burdens are today. She says, hope is not always comforting or comfortable. Hope asks us to open ourselves to what we do not know, to pray for illumination in this life, to imagine what is beyond our imagining, to bear what seems unbearable. It calls us to keep breathing when beloved lives have left us, to turn toward one another when we might prefer to turn away. Hope draws our eyes and our hearts toward the more whole future that propels us into the present, where Christ waits for us to work with him toward a more whole world now. That is my prayer for all of us today. Amen.